The meeting to order. Take a roll call here. I think everybody's here, but on, so the records would show that. The next item is the approval of minutes for the November 17 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, at this point, we have public input. Was there anybody that would like to talk to the commission about any subject they may so desire? No big stampede, so we'll go on to old business. A is discuss proposal from Mary Galensky regarding Charter Section 6.02. Mary, do you have anything further to add to this?
Well, there is a new version. My
Really?
version, which I think they did email to each of you, but this one thing
So this one is not? Okay. So this is,
So this one dated 11/5 is not current?
okay.
Following the discussion at the last meeting, you'll notice there were some changes made that came primarily from option A and B, that came from the city attorney's office, and it's primarily in section B4. The word incapacity was inserted, as was suggested in that information, and moving out of the district within 30 days of their appointment was the other change. And I think serve as chairperson in B1 as opposed to serve as chair were about the only changes involved from what you'd seen previously. And most of those things came from the city attorney's office in their section, option A and option B. The 30 days of appointment, I did check with the previous meetings of the the districting commission, and in their past few sessions, they spend usually the first month kind of getting organized and getting things lined up as to when they were going to have meetings, things of that nature. And after the first month, they were really into the business of the group. And so that's why the within 30 days was inserted.
So that would mean after the 30 days, then they're good to stay on the commission. If they would move out of the district after 30 days of their appointment.
As long as they continue to be a citizen of Sioux Falls.
Yes,
If they
okay.
moved out of town, obviously, they'd need to be replaced.
Okay.
And there were some further verbiage involved in the other suggestion from the city attorney's office, but quite frankly, I felt that this was very clear-cut and simple and easily understood by the citizens in general when it came out on the city ballot for them to vote on. So I would certainly urge you to approve this particular amendment so that it can be something that the citizens have a chance to vote on. Were there any questions anyone had?
What is,
Pardon me?
does this read that says moving out of the district within 30 days if their appointment? Is that?
It should be of their appointment.
Oh,
I think.
of their
Oh, I'm
appointment.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not a typist.
that's okay.
All right.
If you'll change if to of, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Well, we've had more hearings on this than probably anything.
I've met you several
The only
times.
reason we're doing it, Mary, is so we'd like to have you come back.
That's awfully nice of you.
But-
But I really would appreciate for you to vote to include this on the suggested changes that go to the citizens.
I can't speak for everybody, but I don't think that it's necessary that we have any further hearings. But we're not going to vote today, Mary, because
No.
Lon is gone, and we want to have everybody here when we vote on any issue. So so we will have this on the agenda at the next meeting, but it'll be,
In January?
what's that?
In January?
Oh, well, yeah, I think we'll set a meeting in January. We have to do that today. We have to set.
Oh, I'm sorry.
next meeting.
I didn't have your schedule beyond December.
We don't either.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work you've done on this. And
Well, I just feel that it's something that's a worthwhile change, and I appreciate the fact that you seem to recognize that was also true.
yeah, okay. Anybody have any questions of Mary?
Thank you, Mary.
Bill, we're not going to, you're out, but we're not going to vote on anything today because Lon.
I assumed that, I mean, I think you had made that clear when we started even the commission,
Yeah.
that we were going to all be here when we voted on
Yeah.
any item. So that's fine.
Okay, very good. All right, the next item is the proposal from the city clerk regarding Charter Section 6.03. Deb, you're going to,
Deborah Owen, City Clerk, and I did bring extra copies. I know I've handed out my letter to you some time ago, and it's been posted on the internet. But if you need another copy, do you need a copy now? Anybody?
I think I've done it.
It's in their packet. How about Tam? Did you need one? You got it. Okay. I
what's the
think
date on that, Deb?
this was delivered to you on September 15th of this year. Do you need a copy?
It's in your agenda.
It's
Hmm?
in the packet.
Oh, okay, all right. No, that's good.
Okay. I actually am, I know our City Attorney Sean Turneau has submitted language that was an alternate to the language that I had submitted to you earlier, and I would not be in favor of that language. I believe that that could create other issues, and so I would like to have your thoughts on the language that I submitted to you earlier and see what you think about that. If you will, just to remind you, we had discussed it numerous times, so I apologize, but the amendment that I am asking of you is to change it to allow us to use our home rule charter ability to establish an ordinance by the council that would set a date for when people are bringing ballot questions to put on our city election, our municipal election, that we would have a date certain they had to submit it by, a deadline, if you will, to help administer elections. It's a little tricky, though, to have only one date, because council could always call a special election. And in the language given to you by Sean doesn't allow for that. And I think I'd like a little more flexibility. Obviously, then if we have a problem, the council would choose to call a special. It is rare when they do that, but if they would choose to call a special, we would need to change the charter to allow them to bring that language to put it on a ballot. So that's my concern with the language from the city attorney's office.
And, Mr. Chairman, just clarification, we're talking about the revised clerk's proposal submitted on 11/17. Is this the language that you're talking about?
No, the language that I had, that is
Yeah.
the language
Yeah.
from the
Okay,
city attorney's
the
office,
attorney's
correct.
office. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions on this? Or?
So the difference between the two is you're saying that it would be amended by ordinance.
Right, you would have an ordinance similar to what we have in state statute for statewide elections.
Okay, and tell me what, and this is the one proposed by the city attorney's office?
Right.
Okay. Tell me your interpretation of the difference.
Certainly. If you are looking at the proposed language for Section 6.03 by the city attorney's office, they are establishing a date certain or no later than Friday in January of even-numbered years. It wasn't too long ago we had a special election for the Drake Springs pool that was in an odd-numbered year. That was in 2007, where the council or the governing body chose to go ahead and set a special date for an election and not letting it fall on the next municipal election, which would have been 2008. In that case scenario, which is quite recent, this I don't think actually works for what I'm asking you to do. That's all.
Okay, so in that case, that was an odd-numbered year.
Yes.
So how would you see this proposal from the city then affecting that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What would have been the result if this would have been in effect at the time?
Well, you have a state law, which would allow the governing body, the general rule is that it would fall in the next municipal election or the next general election, whichever is first in time. It's in Title IX. But if the governing body chooses to expedite the election, they can do so by a vote on a resolution within 20 days of when the petitions are filed with our office. So in that case, the council chose to go ahead and expedite that election and have it earlier in an odd year. They did that in March of 2007 through a resolution. Obviously, this would only allow them to, this doesn't allow any flexibility for those odd-numbered years, in my mind.
In that case, would we have had to wait until the even-numbered year for the election? If this was in effect?
Well, that's kind of a sticky wicket, if you will, because state law allows the governing body to call a special. So the council, the governing body can call a special election at any point in time. They did it for the rec center. That was before my time in 2005. They did it for the Drake Springs pool in 2007. Certainly, they have the authority through state law to call a special. This wouldn't work, though. I mean, there's kind of a disconnect, if you will, in terms of that operation.
Okay.
Deb, you using the word resolution.
Yep.
What is that referring to? What?
Well, when the council, by their authority, they're the legislative branch, if you will, of this of the form of government that we have, which is a strong mayor form of government. They have the ability, as the governing body, to establish some things with elections. For instance, the number of polling places. They can choose a super precincts that happened recently, or what will happen in 2010, we'll have the full scale, probably 57 to 60 polling places. Those are the kinds of decisions they can make. They can also make the decision to call a unique election at a point that's not our regularly scheduled election, if you will.
Well, you don't have a referendum included in this.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, in my proposal before you, it would allow some flexibility. That's why we would bring an ordinance, and then also would allow, with a home rule charter, you have the ability in law to bring things in or do some things on the local level that in Title IX aren't there for municipalities. For instance, this is being kind of debated now, if you will. I think there's actually a blog or two out there. But recently the legislature required that the Attorney General would have an explanation that would be circulated with the petition signers when they go on statewide issues. That's something that's afforded to statewide elections, if you will, but not to municipal elections. We don't have that ability in state law to do that locally. What Home Rule Charter would do, if we would, with the amendment that I am bringing forward, would allow us to even consider those kinds of options that are in state law for statewide elections for our local elections, too. But what I'm actually just seeking is the ability to put an ordinance when it comes to the regular elections to have a deadline to administer the election. I mean, obviously, we need to have that language to our office at a date certain so that we can print the ballots in an orderly fashion, and we can allow for, if there's a legal challenge with the city attorney's office, there just needs to be a date certain so that we know how to administer that election in an orderly fashion.
Well, you don't feel it's needed for the referendum because that's already limited?
Oh, yes, pardon me. The referendum is a little different operation of law because you have that the circulators need to gather 5% of the registered voters within 20 days of the date of first publication. So in that instance, the council also can expedite that election, but there's a little bit of a caveat in law, and pardon me, I haven't read it recently, but if it relates to something that would take a place immediately, like a sales tax being instituted, you might have to call that prior to, the governing body may have to call that earlier than they might want to elect to. Obviously, the governing body gets to choose special elections, but there are certain scenarios where they may have to bring that forward as an operation of law. So.
Would it make any sense while we're in the process to include referendum, though, if we wanted to change it for some reason?
Well, I wouldn't, because I do think that there's provision there for that, and maybe that we could look at down the road. I was really looking for just more of a simpler approach to that ballot question, those issues that are out there that are initiated measures by the citizens of Sioux Falls, making sure that, when they bring those in, they know when the deadline is to get them on the ballot.
Anybody have any questions? Deb? Deb, you've been researching this lately. Was the problem arose because the Supreme Court said that you can use the initiative to repeal? What we used to think you had to do by referendum, now you can do by initiative, right?
Correct. They kind of opened the door.
Okay, now I wonder if we wanted to, is that in the Constitution, South Dakota Constitution, that provision?
Well, I'm going to defer to others, but I do believe in that case, what came forward in their holding was that they were going to broadly construe the language in the Constitution, which would allow that broader definition or interpretation of what initiated measure was. And that's not a direct quote, so pardon me.
Now, what they ruled in that case, I can't remember the name of the case, but what they ruled in that case, if it's based upon the South Dakota Constitution, then we couldn't, would this ordinance be of any
No.
validity? We couldn't amend the Constitution.
Correct,
But
and that is not what I would be. I wouldn't want to be going outside or to be in conflict with the Constitution. Obviously, that would put the ordinance at peril.
Yeah.
But you do have provisions in state law for statewide ballot initiatives, and that's what I wanted to tap into, to be able to bring that provision in state law, which is in a different chapter that's not considered for municipal law, if you will, and then bring that into our local ordinance so that we could also benefit from having that deadline when we're trying to plan an election.
Very good. Anybody have any questions of Deb? Deb, we aren't going to vote on this either. We'll take it up next meeting.
Thank
Are we
you.
going to schedule that for a vote?
Well, I think, yeah, we can, I don't know if we have to schedule it for a vote. We'll bring it up again, and we can, if we want to vote, we can. If for some reason someone has a good idea not to.
Okay.
So we'll try to get it out of the way, though, because we've had you back a
Thank
number
you,
of
sir.
times in this, too. Of
Thank
course, you're
you.
closer.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a comment to make. As I look at the revision from the city attorney's office, and I just paged through the charter very quickly. As I explained, I didn't have my information with me because I've been stuck downtown all day. But I don't find anything in the charter as it exists now that is set off by parentheses. And this last sentence in this one is set off by parentheses, and somehow, to me, when I look at parenthetical expressions, it indicates they're not that important or something. I don't know. I don't know why this is set off with parentheses.
I can explain that. That wasn't intended to be in parentheses. It was done that way because we hadn't had an opportunity to talk yet with the clerk's office about that proposal. So for lack of a better explanation, I just put it in parentheses because I didn't even know if it was necessary to do what it is she's doing. So it isn't intended. If it was going to be a proposal, it wouldn't be in parentheses.
All right.
I'd also point out that that language, of course, leaves the option open and available to the council to adopt an ordinance to that effect. Of course, it doesn't compel the council to propose such an ordinance, but it just allows that opportunity. So I think that addresses the concerns that the clerk has. And also, I would just say that her, as I explained to her when we briefly talked about it, the language proposed by the clerk actually would not work.
It wouldn't work?
It would not work.
Why?
Because it's saying that an ordinance could be adopted by the city that could change the referendum process, and that cannot happen under state law. Or it would allow that opportunity to be had. So, there may be some language somewhere in the middle, but to say is except as amended by ordinance, and also I would say that language would open up the possibility that an ordinance could somehow repeal a general law of the state, which of course it cannot do.
I would actually like to speak to that, only because that wasn't part of our communication, Sean, with all due respect. I don't believe that you can put an ordinance in place that would be in conflict with the general laws of the state. I think we're
That's
both
what your
in
language
agreement on
says.
that.
That's exactly what
But
your language says.
It clearly says that the general rule is that we will abide by state law, except as amended by ordinance. And in this case, we would be bringing in the state law, but would be state law that would be in a different chapter that does not apply to cities. And so therefore, we want to be able to bring that state law provision into our local ordinance.
Kev, what's your idea of this as far as when is the deadline? Is it? It says here not later than the last Friday in January of any even-numbered year. Okay.
Okay.
But what about an ordinance how about initiated ordinance repealing something that goes 2 years after
Right.
whatever law they're trying to repeal? Would this language block that?
That is, I mean, those are the details that are part of my concern about the language submitted by the city attorney's office as an alternate to the language I provided for you. Because I do think you have to allow for the operation of law in referendums and in other situations work and carry out. Obviously, those provisions in state law are going to rule or govern, if you will, our local elections. What we don't have in municipal law and part of that is, and pardon me for the details, is because the state allows cities to set elections at different times in the year, both school districts and municipalities. What we have with our home rule charter is we have a fixed date certain for our city election. And so we can, because we have some things that are kind of parallel to our statewide elections, because of the ability we have through home rule charter, we would like to parallel some of what the provisions that they have at that state level into ours. But I have concerns about, I would not want to, I personally wouldn't recommend going beyond any of that scope, to go ahead and leave those provisions there, because different scenarios create different results in terms of when you bring something forward, when you repeal something, and that's why I did not draft it that way.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, the people, when they vote on this, if it gets that far, they're going to really be scratching their heads, wondering what in the world is all about. You agree?
I think the potential is, and that's why we wanted to keep the language very simple.
Yeah.
We just to
Yours is.
allow for an ordinance in places where we could elect to do that. And again, as which I have shared with you, what we would want to bring forward in an ordinance would be parallel language to what the Secretary of State did recently, a few years ago, in terms of setting deadlines for his issues that come to his office.
Okay. Well, thank you, Deb. very
Thanks,
much.
Deborah.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience want to have any input on this issue? Our next item is the proposal from Bill Early regarding the English being deemed the common language for Sioux Falls. Bill, do you want to make any statements?
Sure, I will. I think there's been public input the last time. I didn't get a chance because we ran out of time. But what I'm proposing is a law, or part of the charter, an extension of the charter, which would simply state that English is the common language for city documents, including but not limited to notices, signage, correspondence, public records, and any public meetings. And obviously the reason behind that is that there could be such a time as when might be some question is what languages do these notices have to be published in, or what should they be published in? And by putting this into the charter, we're just saying that English is the common language and they will be published in English. It is no different than what the state of South Dakota has put in law, and I believe it was 1995, and in 12720, that states the common language of the state is English. The common language is designated as the language of any official public document or record in any official public meeting. So once again, where we have our own charter for the City of Sioux Falls, state law doesn't necessarily apply, and we're extending our charter to be, in this case, to mirror what's going on with state law today.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. Did I understand you to say that because it's in state law and because we have a city charter, the state law doesn't apply to us?
The state law says the common language of the state is English. So that may not.
Right, it says, the state law says for any state documents.
Would you take your hand down when you talk, please? Thanks.
The state law provision says, as to any state documents or state meetings, that English is the common language. It does not say as to municipalities, documents, or meetings, or notices, or the like.
What is the difference, Bill, between, because between official and common? What, some have the official language.
It's a good question, Dick. As you look through, if you look through the state laws, go to the index, and it says official language. You go to the ordinance or to the state law, and it doesn't say official; it says common. So I think it's kind of mixed and mashed together. But I don't know that there's what the definition would be. But as I looked it up, just going to the index to see where it was at today, I see it said official, which I thought was kind of surprising, since the law itself says common. But it's just saying that the city on publications or notices by ordinance would use English for those notices and publications.
It seems to me, I mean, I haven't looked in the dictionary, but if I hear the word common, it means, well, more people use a particular language than anything, you know. In other words, English wouldn't be the common language if we only 20% of the people talked English, right? But whereas an official language, you could designate, if only 5% spoke a particular language, you could still designate that as the official. And I'm just really shooting from the hip here because I haven't done any research, but just the common usage of
It
those.
would seem to me that you would be difficult for 5%. A language spoken by 5% would be, in any way, become law as the official language, but
Okay. Anybody, you have any?
Is there any public?
Yeah.
Is there anyone here wants to address this issue? Okay. Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity of appearing before you. My name is Edgar Harvey, and I'm a retired English professor from the University of Sioux Falls. And I'm a friend of Bill Thompson. And because Bill is in Pier today, he got in touch with me and told me that there was a proposal about having a statement in the charter that English would be the official or the common language for the city, and asked me if I would be interested in appearing to talk about that, and certainly I am. I debated whether I would come out in the snowstorm this afternoon. I called to find out if the meeting was being canceled, and I decided if Bill could go all the way to Pier, I probably could come down to 10th Street and talk to you. I'd like to just speak briefly against this proposal for kind of two general areas. First, I don't see a need for the statement in the city charter. And then secondly, I have some concerns about possible negative effects that such a statement would have. And regarding the fact that I don't see a need for it, you just raised the issue about whether state laws apply to the city since we have a city charter or a city, what do you call it, form of government. But my reading of the state law suggests, in contrast to what the attorney's office suggested, that they're not talking just about English being the common language for state documents, because the state law has 6 exceptions to it, and those exceptions talk about such things as instruction designed to aid students who have a limited English proficiency, or people who are teaching foreign languages, and people who are in need of emergency services, public safety concerns. And so it seems to me like that law is addressing people who live in cities, like the people of Sioux Falls, not just concerned with official documents that the state creates. So I think that the state of South Dakota has really already covered this issue, and they've got a strong form of the English-only law. There are 30 states now that have such a law. South Dakota is one of only 5 out of those 30 states that has what's called a private right of action. That is the express right of an individual to sue or to seek other legal action against the state for failing to enforce or implement the law that is requiring all official public documents and records to be in English. So our state law goes farther than quite a few of the other state laws on this matter, saying, any individual can raise the issue and say, I don't think we are dealing properly with having English as the common language, and therefore I want to sue. So seems to me that we already have this issue dealt with. So I think if Sioux Falls were to place this kind of an English-only provision in the city charter, to me that really creates a kind of tone of hostility toward non-native speakers or immigrants. In addition, I have concerns about possible negatives that such a statement would bring. I think it would create an inconsistency in the way Sioux Falls deals with and interacts with people who have come to live with us from another country. It would create inconsistency regarding our relations with or attitudes toward refugees and immigrants. For decades, Sioux Falls has really welcomed and encouraged so-called foreigners, especially through the work of Lutheran Social Services, the wonderful things that they have done to help refugees and immigrants settle here. And by our openness and helping new residents, we show that we honored them for who they are and why they have come to join us. I think that an explicit announcement in the city charter that basically says, in this city, English is the common language, sends the message that we don't really like diversity, that we want everybody to be Americans just like we are, the same kind of Americans. From my perspective as an English teacher, I believe it's very important to be positive in our approach in encouraging language learning. Success in educating is very much about positive reinforcement or incentivizing. Of course, grades on tests and papers aren't always positive reinforcement, but giving non-native speakers a feeling you'd better learn English or else, that we don't plan to accommodate you any more than is absolutely necessary, that would be kind of using the English language to punish people who are not native speakers of English. And so that kind of makes language learning surrounded by negative feelings. And my last concern might not really apply to Sioux Falls in such a big way, but I think that this kind of a statement does not help us when it comes to a matter of security, national security. If we create the idea that we want people who come from another culture to drop their culture and become like us and learn English and use English all the time, we're not encouraging them to maintain their cultures and their native languages. And given that Americans are so unwilling to take foreign languages and become proficient in them, we are kind of in trouble in terms of relating to people around the world. And right now the military is kind of in a desperate need for people who are competent speakers of Arabic. And in terms of trade and commerce, as well as military and Secret Service and all of that, we need people who are maybe they're new Americans, but they're patriotic Americans, and they recognize that their culture is honored and valued, and they can work for us by relating to people in other parts of the world. So I think that my sense is that creating this kind of a statement in the charter would have possible negative consequences. So that's my take on the proposal. And I guess I also have a concern if this section 106 is all that would be put into the city charter, I would really be wondering what about some of those exceptions that are listed in the state law? Should they, if you do adopt it, shouldn't they be there too?
Would you mind stating your name again?
Pardon?
Would you mind stating your name again?
Edgar, E-D-G-A-R, Harvey, H-A-R-V-E-Y.
What would you think of a law that's stated in the case where a statute requires notice be by publication, all right? That publication in English is sufficient. Just limit it to that. How would you feel about that?
Well, I guess I would, I guess it's contextual. I think living in Sioux Falls, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If I lived in some parts of the country where Spanish-speaking people are the majority in certain communities, like Texas or Arizona or California, then I think that would be different. It
would be what?
It would be different. I think I see some governments, some local governments probably really need to publish official documents in both Spanish and English, say, because of the situation that exists right now in those cultures. At the same time, I think Spanish-speaking people all over the country recognize that it's to their advantage, it's very important for them to become competent in English, and they are doing that. And so I think we are still a melting pot, and people who come with a different culture and different language are ultimately going to be English speakers in almost all cases, unless they come here when they're 73 years old or something like that. But I think there's a kind of a transition period, and if the city that's in question is in a part of America that has a very high proportion of Spanish-speaking people, then I would think an English-only rule about official documents wouldn't be a good idea.
But is your position on this really support for the opposition? You say that it's important to, like we have a larger Hispanic community, to also have notices, in Spanish. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if we were, if we were in a different part of the country that is close to Mexico and has a large population of people who are not speakers of English temporarily, it would be necessary or prudent to publish things in two languages. I guess I'm not sure that there is I don't know, but I don't know that there would be a problem here, because I think the expectation of non-native speakers in Sioux Falls is already that things are conducted in English. They are, and they know that. And I guess my sense is just that putting this kind of a statement in the charter, announcing that English is the language, it's kind of unnecessary, and therefore it becomes kind of a slap in the face.
Well, what I would be worried about, there's a lot of things, you can start lawsuits by publication, all right? Under our long arm statute, someone comes into the state and commits a tort, leaves, can't find, you can get service by publication. But let's assume that individual doesn't speak English. He comes into the state, runs into someone, kills someone, leaves. So you're trying to get service on him. Statute of limitations, if you don't get service, the statute of limitations is going to run. And so you put the notice in the paper in English, and he doesn't speak a word of English. Could he come in? I don't know if this has happened, but could he come in later on and say, look, you knew I spoke only one language. I can't read the notice you put in the paper, so I didn't have valid legal notice. And therefore, the statute is run, it's too late, and I can see some courts going along with that.
Right.
How would you feel about that instance?
I'm an English teacher, not an attorney, so,
Well,
I really would hate to pronounce about that, because I don't know the legal ramifications.
well, as we become a more and more diverse nation, obviously this is becoming more and more of a problem. But
Yeah.
I don't want to promote anything that diminishes the worth of an individual and everything. But I am concerned strictly from a legal standpoint. What ramifications does it have with all these legal notices that are required? And yet, a legal notice to someone that cannot speak English is meaningless, isn't it?
Right. But don't you feel, I guess the question is, doesn't the law that the state has on its books cover everybody in Sioux Falls? Is it necessary to have this as a statement in the charter? Because the issue has already been dealt with for the whole state.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Have to plead ignorance on that one. Well, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you showing
Thank
up.
you, Edgar.
Anybody else want to say anything?
I think he's just right here. He's not coming up
Anybody
here.
else?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, in my experience with dealing with people who have chosen to come to live with us, I used to call them people from other lands, and my sister told me that was not appropriate. So these are people. That's a very nice thing that you said, Edgar, people who have chosen to come and live with us. And I'm very familiar with the Bosnian family, a Vietnamese family, just a couple. We have some Native Americans who do not speak English, but all of those folks that I know have community around them who are able to speak English, and they can get translation done of these legal documents. I can see if there's some crook that's committed a crime and goes off and you publish in the newspaper in English, and he claims, he, she, it claims can't speak English, there's surely an attorney there that will defend him. So I can understand that argument. But I do not think that it's necessary for us to put in our city charter that English is the common language. And I don't know if we were supposed to be debating this now with Lon gone or not, but that's, I just have to say that before I forget it.
Well, we're not going to vote for you. You know, restaurants put up signs and they're not responsible for coat if I'm
Right.
That's in English. Oh, what if a Norwegian comes in?
I know, that's right.
Well, I was raised in a family. All four of my grandparents came from Norway, and it was very common in the, as grandpa and grandma's,
Yeah.
everybody spoke Norwegian. But anyway, the next item is a proposal that I was going to bring up. I had asked them to put this on the agenda some time ago, and in the meantime, I'm going to withdraw it. But I did think you should have, because it's on the agenda, you should have an idea of what the proposal was, but I'm not going to go ahead with it. So,
And may I ask a question of either Deborah or Sean? I remember when Jerry Noonan was here testifying on Mary's suggestion for charter change, Jerry mentioned the part in our charter that talks about independent audit, and it's never, so is this what Jerry was referring to, what Dick has here? No?
No, I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
None of it is what Jerry was referring to?
I thought he mentioned something about there would be details related to the CIP, and he didn't think that occurred, and of course it does occur.
Okay. It wasn't. Okay, thank you.
We have just about 5 minutes to comply with our rule. We got to set the next, I think,
Oh,
we have
that's
to
right.
set the next meeting date.
Yes, we do.
So, I assume at the next meeting, we'll be voting on Mary's proposal.
If everybody's
and on
here.
Deb's proposal and on Bill's, so we'll see.
We might have to be like Congress and set Sunday meetings or Saturday meetings.
Since when do they attend those?
Weren't they doing it just recently?
Me and them.
Okay.
Pretty
All
much
right.
Tuesday to Thursday.
Okay.
So we're going to go into January?
Yes, I would imagine so we wouldn't be,
In the end of the month.
Are you going to be out in Pier?
yes. So that's why I would like to, if possible, the session starts on the 12th of January. So what I would, if possible, I'd like to have the next meeting the first week in January, unless that
Which
is
would be
inconvenient for too
the
many.
5th? Are you talking about the 5th on a Tuesday?
That would be well, let's see, January is 12th is Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, now the 5th is a Tuesday.
Yes.
Let me make a suggestion that we try that and see if all 5 can be here.
The
And if
5th?
all 5 can't be here, then we need to find another
Okay,
Before the 12th.
before the 12th.
all right.
Are we not able to get anything put together in December? A meeting?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm free on the 25th, are you?
It's a Friday, right? There are 3 weeks left in the month. I mean,
Well, how about the week of December 28th, after, that inconvenient? I think it's going to be tough to find something in December.
Yeah, I
that's
think
fine.
it is too.
Is the 22nd out for everybody?
Oh, yeah, it is out for me.
Okay.
In December?
Yes.
I thought Lon might, be here that week.
Well, he might be.
That's,
Yep.
yeah, he might
Yeah,
be here around
that's
Christmas
true.
better than any other time.
How about the 21st?
No, that's even worse for me.
All right.
Mondays are tough with the council.
Oh, sure.
What's our time schedule on,
End of January, final report goes about early February, mid-February, if I remember right, so.
And so he'll be gone.
But your situation, once legislature starts, you're only available when? You're going up?
well, there's a lot of 4-day weeks now, so.
Oh, that's right, they changed the
Yeah,
calendar.
they've changed that, so usually I've got, every week you probably got either Monday or Friday.
Friday, okay.
Okay.
And I can skip too, I mean, it's not.
Or we could come to Pier and meet with you in Pier, shall
It'd
we?
be fun.
Is the 5th?
No.
Well, even on those short weeks, the Thursday afternoon wouldn't be that bad.
Well, the only reason I'd have to be here, someone else can, if we're voting.
Right, and that's kind of
Other
where
than
we're at.
that.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
So is the 5th what we're talking about? January?
That's
Should we
what-
try the 5th?
Let's
Contact Lon and
Okay.
verify that date will
All
work.
right.
right away. And it would be at 3:30 again?
is your fallback date maybe the 6th then?
The 6th?
Does the 6th, I'm just thinking if it didn't work for somebody, would the
Yeah.
6th work?
The bad thing is about Lon is if he's gone on the 5th, he's probably not around on the 6th either. It seems like his trips are, you
Yeah.
know,
At least a week long. if-
week to
Yeah.
10 days, so.
Well, you let us know after you
Sure.
Okay,
I'll send you out a new proposal if the 5th isn't going to work with him.
all right. Well, anyone else have anything? If not, I'll exercise accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion. Thank you, everybody. Please leave this note every time. Please remember to speak directly into the microphone. So I'm